Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Shuffle Music Reviews and Retrospectives from a Gracelessly Aging Millennial. My name's Keaton. This is the third installment of our Golden Anniversary 1976 to 2026 series. So we're talking about albums that came out in 1976, celebrating their 50th anniversary this year. We made Volume 2, Kingfish, in honor of the passing of Bob Weir, but I wanted to actually stick with this Grateful Dead theme because even though the Grateful Dead did not have an album out in 1976, of course, Weir put out Kingfish, where he joined that band for that album. That's in a video that you may have seen already. There's another sort of Dead adjacent artist who put out a magnificent album in 1976. And I'm talking about multi-instrumentalist David Grisman, who collaborated with the Grateful Dead and Jerry Garcia on many occasions. He put out a gorgeous album in 1976 called the Rounder Records album, or in this case, the Rounder Compact Disc, since this is an image listed from that jewel case. But it's essentially a self-titled album made for Rounder Records, which was an Americana label. It still is an Americana label. It still is in existence to this day. But David Grisman was a frequent collaborator with Jerry Garcia. He played mandolin on the Grateful Dead's gorgeous album, really a masterpiece album called American Beauty. And Grisman was a really great musician, mandolin player, American roots artist. He was born in 1945 in Passaic, New Jersey, but you wouldn't know it to listen to his playing or this album. This sounds as down home as it gets, just a straightforward bluegrass Americana album. Grisman went to NYU in the early 60s, and then he moved to San Francisco after that, where he actually met Jerry Garcia. And of course, after playing on the American Beauty album, which came out in 1970, he would re-team with Garcia 5 years later for sort of a bluegrass band project called One in the Way. That album came out in 1975. A couple years after that, in 77, he would release his first album with the David Grisman Quintet. But between those two efforts, he released this gem of a recording for Rounder Records, which is an American roots music label that actually still exists today. He assembles a roster of bluegrass greats for this album. Guitarist Tony Rice, who was also a Jerry Garcia collaborator. Jerry Garcia had a great affection for bluegrass and roots music as well. Tony Rice also played guitar for a lot of country and bluegrass greats. Dolly Parton, Mary Chapin Carpenter, the great banjo player Bella Fleck, and of course Emmylou Harris. Ricky Skaggs is also a mandolin player who plays on this album. He doesn't play mandolin on this album. He actually splits fiddle duties with Vassar Clements. He also sings vocals on this album. Ricky Skaggs had a great solo career. He also has a band called Kentucky Thunder, which is terrific if you like that kind of music. Jerry Douglas plays dobro on this, Bill Keith on banjo, and Todd Phillips on bass. Just a bluegrass ensemble band. Grisman would go on to coin the term dog music, D-A-W-G, which was sort of his nickname for a combination of jazz styles, sort of old and new, dating back to the sort of Django Reinhardt sort of guitar era. He would actually release an album called Hot Dog in 1978, which sort of debuted that style. So he was sort of known as an innovator on the instrument. Mandolin was, of course, his main instrument. And he would go on to collaborate with Jerry Garcia lots more. You may have seen this album cover. This is an album that came out in 1991 called Jerry Garcia and David Grisman. But then after Jerry's passing, several more recordings between Garcia and Grisman would surface, including probably most famously the Pizza Tapes. Tony Rice's name on there as well, of course, also plays on this Rounder album. So these artists all kind of swam in the same circles and made a lot of great Americana music together. This album here, Been All Around This World, these were more recordings that were then published in 2004. And then a series that is seemingly ongoing, the Bare Bones series. This is out on streaming. Lots more recordings between Jerry Garcia and David Grisman. But this one, this Rounder Records album, is a pretty straightforward bluegrass album, just a classic kind of genre album. It's beautifully recorded, and within the bluegrass genre, there's actually a lot of variation in here. It's not all just sawing on strings, although one song is literally titled Sawing on the Strings, and that is sang by Ricky Skaggs and Tony Rice with great sort of vocal harmonies on that one, a bright, cheerful, sort of traditional style bluegrass song. I'll put the track list up on there. Hello and So Long are just vocal intros and outros. So beyond that, you have just lots of great compositions here. Grisman wrote some of these songs himself, like Waiting on Vassar, which features a sort of main bluegrass motif with some great soloing from the ensemble players, especially Grisman himself on mandolin and Vassar Clemens on fiddle. You also have Opus 38 and Bob's Bruin. Those are original Grisman tunes. Then there's some Bill Monroe covers. Bill Monroe was an old bluegrass giant whose career spanned literally 70 years, from the 20s through the 90s when he passed away. He is in the Bluegrass Hall of Fame, and yes, there is such a thing. Cheyenne, which is an instrumental piece, that's a Bill Monroe tune. And then also On and On, which is one of the last songs on the album. It's one of the highlights. That has some great three-part vocal harmony between Tony Rice, Ricky Skaggs, and Grisman himself. There's a real depth to the recording here, a real warmth to the sound. They really capture the live performance of the musicians beautifully. I mean, if you listen to this on any kind of sound system, obviously, it doesn't have to be a state-of-the-art thing. I don't have a state-of-the-art sound system, but like if you don't listen on your phone, if you listen through even an iHome or TV speakers or whatever, I mean, it sounds like there's a hootenanny going on in your living room. That's how good the recording is. It's just really beautifully captured. It's a great starter album if you're not sure whether you can get into that sort of bluegrass Americana music. If you're a fan of the genre, you should absolutely check this out. I think it's magnificent. If you're not a fan of the genre, you probably won't like this very much, as it is an unapologetic and straightforward bluegrass album. But if you're not so sure about that kind of music and it's something you think you might want to get into, I definitely recommend checking this out. My introduction into this kind of Americana music came from playing at these open mics in the Hudson Valley as a teenager. When I was in high school, I would just bring my guitar, which I was just kind of learning how to play, and had some covers that I would play at these open mics. But the thing about the Hudson Valley is there is a kind of Hudson Valley sound that musicians around here talk about. You obviously have Woodstock, which may not be technically in the Hudson Valley, but it's in this area. The band did a lot of recordings there, Levon Helm, obviously, and that sort of roots rock Americana meets rock and roll sound is very prevalent around the Hudson Valley region of New York. It's sort of part of the musical culture here. And so at a lot of these open mics, you would get a lot of musicians who would play the kind of instruments that are featured on this album. There was a mandolin player who would show up to these open mics. There was this old woman who used to play the banjo at these open mics. People used to call her Banjo Lil, and she would get up there and stomp her feet and play banjo and sing these old traditional songs. She was a favorite. And because you had a lot of these kinds of musicians who would bring these sort of string instruments to these open mics, a lot of them really did take the form of like hootenannies, where you would basically, grab a mandolin player to ask him, do you know this song? No? All right, well, it's a G chord, D chord, A minor, C chord. You want to come up and play along with me? Sure, If it didn't go well, who cared? It didn't matter. So there were a lot of those kinds of players in the music scene in the Hudson Valley. And one of them just told me, if you're into this kind of music, you should check this out. And so I at the time you can only buy CDs. This was really before any kind of streaming took hold, or there was any kind of like iTunes store. And this is not the kind of album that you would find on Napster, right? I mean, people weren't sharing this David Grisman Rounder compact disc on the torrent sites. And so it wasn't until years later that I actually found this on iTunes and downloaded it. But I was really, really glad that I did. It's a really, really pretty album. It's a great entree into the genre. So if you're not sure, if you want to sort of dip your feet into bluegrass, Americana, American roots, string band music, I think this is a great place to start. And given that the Grateful Dead is back into the conversation, you're really getting a pure genre album from some artists who made a great impact, not just in the bluegrass genre, but on rock and roll more broadly. This is just them really digging into their roots in the genres where they were really trained and know best. And Grisman, still alive today, still kicking, has made a lot of great music with a lot of great artists, and he really puts together a great ensemble for this album. And like I said, it's just beautifully recorded. So please do check this out. This turns 50 years old this year, the David Grisman Rounder Records album. Thanks everybody very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. We will see you next time.